Akio intro.
Press start.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of Odd Shaped Panel. We're your hosts. My name's Tom, and this is the lovely Kimber.
Hello.
If you're interested in anything we have to say, you can check us out outside of the show at our little Twitter handles. We're going to put them right here. Right? Well,
This area, maybe?
yeah.
So coincidentally, Cal actually sent us our first question today, and he asked, what film adaptation do you think was truest to its source material?
Watchmen, the graphic novel.
Okay, cool.
Because I was thinking I didn't really enjoy it that much, but I felt like each panel of the comic was brought to life throughout the movie, like spot on. Like even like the word bubbles, like everything, like even the smallest details were all seen in the movie. So I figured it was very true to the source material.
Yeah, look, comparing the graphic novels to those movies, very similarly, V for Vendetta, both Watchmen and V for Vendetta were very like pastel and very like trippy books, and to be able to successfully turn them into this gritty, dark undertone, whereas the graphic novel, while it had dark story plots, was very bright. They did a really good job capturing that, even though, I mean, Snyder made some slight decisions that I may have not necessarily made. But when they released I forget what it's called, is it Black Sail? The animation they released, that if you watch the side story,
right?
When they kind of put that out, I was like, all right, they're really trying, you know what I mean? So I give them credit. Black Freighter, that's what it is. Thank you, Jason.
I feel like Watchmen was very true to source material. Almost, all the way down to, a number of frames, like the way it was shot, just beautifully done. Like I don't have to really go too deep there, man. Like the Watchmen was gorgeous.
The world will look up and shout, "Save us!" Not a whisper. No.
And the other one we'll go with is Misery. I feel like Misery was a really great adaptation. I feel like it kept a lot of the scares. This was almost my number 2 answer, my next question's answer, just because there's something about like the visual scares, something about like the audible music added to the scare, like
as well as the sound effects, like bones breaking in.
Yeah. So
it's really intense.
Misery has so much less gore, but I feel like it succeeds at torture much better than like Hostel or these other movies, which like just show you like straight up what's happening. There's like suspense towards like the idea of him possibly getting tortured more is scarier than seeing another person tortured.
It's the cast.
Exactly.
They're amazing.
And her conviction is like, I mean, you get swept up, man, hard. Like her conviction is just like, I mean, there's like nothing like it. I mean, yes, definitely well-deserved Oscar. Like that woman, I mean, she was terrifying. Like the stuff nightmares are made of.
Yeah.
My choice is, first of all, if we could count TV for this question, my choice would be the first season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, super good, super accurate, excellent. Like, I read it recently. I'm reading the books, as you know, and I had seen the show a dozen times. So by the time I read it, it was like shockingly accurate to me. To like see it on the page was so interesting.
So do you think that these directors and all that, or whoever trying to make it from the like book to film or book to TV, try to make it as accurate as possible the first go around, just to get all the fans in, and then they kind of lose to get like the more general audience in? They kind of lose that.
I think that's a really interesting question, but I feel like it probably has more to do with they start out wanting to be really accurate to the source material because they love the source material and they care about it. But eventually, like as they keep going on in the process, they hit a bunch of movie stuff, like movie problems that they have to deal with and red tape that they're dealing with and like budget and production crap that like we don't know anything about, and that's what kind of ends up derailing them. Particularly, I'm sure with Game of Thrones, dealing with so many characters that has like a ripple effect. If they have to change one thing early on in season 2 or whatever, by the time they are now like going to be filming season 7 and stuff, this ripple effect has caused huge differences in the plot line. So I think it mostly has to do with like movie stuff and TV stuff that they have no control over, you know? But if we're going movies, I'm going to pick something that might be a controversial choice, and it's not because every single thing that happens in the book happens in the movie, because it doesn't. And it's not like the most perfectly accurate like to the storyline thing, but when you watch it, it really feels like the book, and I feel like that's the most important thing, and that's the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's a book that I've read a bunch of times, so when I saw it translated to the screen, it was a big deal to me that it would feel like it did when I read it. And the casting choices I thought were really great. Particularly, I love Sean Astin as Samwise. And the music is amazing. Like, nothing feels more like the Shire than the music in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. It couldn't be more perfect. And they really just captured, like, all the different realms of Middle Earth, which is really important because Tolkien's so famous for his world building and his maps and stuff. So I think like at the heart of everything that's really important about Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson really cared, and it shows a lot.
Yeah, and to just enunciate that fact, the big thing about Tolkien was attention to detail, which Jackson knocked out of the park. He like went down to like the microscopic effect, and like you can tell, and it shows when you compare the Lord of the Rings to the Hobbit, which I put them both kind of on the same tier. When it goes to like practical effects, as if like the orc's armor, which was like painstakingly like handcrafted, versus like the CGI mess they do in the Hobbit, it definitely shows.
Yeah, and not to mention, like they were talking about the video we were playing before the show, like they innovated technology in order to make doing a Lord of the Rings trilogy possible. Like, he totally came up with new technology to do those masses of like armies fighting. That was like developed for those movies, and they still use that stuff with all kinds of movies now. And not to mention like the groundbreaking CGI stuff and like motion capture that they did with Andy Serkis, which has also become like, not only has the way they do stuff like that become a standard in the business, using Andy Serkis has become a standard in the business because he was so excellent in that role as Smeagol. Like, he blew people's minds when Gollum came out because we had never seen like a CGI character that was so lifelike. It still looks great.
I'm gonna choose something that, I mean, it's the obvious answer, but it's just so true. I'm choosing Lord of the Rings. This is all 3 books into one. This thing is like a Bible. Woo-hoo. But I have read it all, along with an audiobook, and it took a long time. But yeah, I chose Lord of the Rings because when you read this, there's just so much that Tolkien does. He describes pretty much everything that you understand why it's the length it is. It's just so full, rich of lore. Like, everything has a story. And I think that Jackson's, while it didn't get everything, it would really be impossible to get everything, even with the length of the films. And they're notoriously, like, long. It could take a full day to watch them, like a literal full day. But it's about as true to the source material as it can be, really. The cast is perfect. I agree with you, Kimber. I love Sam most, and that's my Sam. I mean, I want a best friend like that. And
I have a best friend like that. Her name is Sweet Pea.
I'm going to go with the play A Raisin in the Sun, and the adaptation I'm going to go with was one that was released a few years ago that starred Sean Combs, a.k.a. P. Diddy, and the mom from The Cosby Show. I totally lost what her name is, but plays the grandmother character in the play called Mama. Felicia Rashad, thank you, Cal. I knew it was something that sounded cool, and I got it mixed up. But yes, if you're not familiar with A Raisin in the Sun, it's about an impoverished African-American family who, like, the grandfather dies, and so the mama inherits this money, but then her son, Walter, thinks that he's entitled to the money, and then his sister, like, she also needs some money. Hello, Tiblet. to go to college. So they're all fighting over this money that, like, not even realizing, like, we should be sad that our father has passed away, and just like all of the trials and tribulations of being a struggling family. Yes, I know, Tibble, you struggle all the time. International Cat Day, everybody. And so it's just a really good portrayal. It doesn't really take any liberties with the play. It kind of presents it. It was like, I think it came out as a TV movie, but it's really faithful to the story, and just a very brilliant performance by Sean Combs as Walter. I mean, we showed it last year to the kids, and like they actually wanted to like watch the rest of it. Usually when you show them an adaptation of something that's not young adult, they don't get as excited, but they really enjoyed the story.
I'm thinking of all these other movies that were books at one point, and the closest I can say, just from personal opinion, was Starship Troopers, but only in so far that I think it actually kind of got the feel of the spirit. It got the spirit of what the book was about, and it was more or less lampooning and being political and topical and things like that. But when the book was released, you couldn't necessarily be as coy about that and people get the point. So they had to kind of be like, no, this is like a Vietnam flashback book type situation, where the movie that we got was way more tongue-in-cheek and silly. It's like how, Idiocracy is political satire of today. And it's a similar concept where, to me, when I read it, granted it was 6th grade, this is 20 years ago almost. Longer than that.
I'm trying to remember one more.
It was 96.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, it was 20 years ago. Back then, it felt very much like patriotism, but insofar that like you could tell that this was bad. Like the super jingoistic level of patriotism was bad.
It kind of highlighted how close, because think about how. American propaganda and Russian propaganda and the Cold War were very different, but you can see nowadays that they're very similar. And I think Starship Troopers was kind of commenting on that. We're not that different the way we handle war.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to say, if you really want a good example of that, Fallout does a good job of showing all the propaganda stuff and all that jazz. If you haven't played any of the Fallout games, it does a good job of it.
And talk about it. It would have to be Anne Rice's interview with the Vampire. As Kimber was talking before, that was her list that was my list that. They tried and cleaned the damned, swing and a miss.
And it was a good attempt, but it's one of those things where love or hate Tom Cruise for Tom Cruise being Tom Cruise. He is a fantastic actor.
And talk about being close to the book. The only things that Kirsten Dunst is 12 in that movie, and her character, Claudette, is only supposed to be 5. And Claudia, I'm sorry. It's supposed to be 5. And I think she's playing an 8-year-old or 9-year-old, even though she's 12. So that, and the way it ended was a little bit, but that was kind of left to the imagination in the book, and you're kind of drawn to that conclusion anyway.
Tom Cruise is Lestat in Interview with the Vampire for most of his work, but he is freaking amazing as Lestat. He's perfect. They're talking about they want to recast Lestat and this and that. I don't care for that idea because we already had a perfect Lestat.
For me, this was a pretty easy one. I think it's probably the best adaptation of the source material. Interview with the Vampire, I feel like the reason it is one of the best, if not the best, is because the person who wrote the screenplay had complete creative control over their own book, because Anne Rice wrote the screenplay for Interview with the Vampire, and William Goldman wrote the screenplay for The Princess Bride.
Yes, I watched that last night.
Yeah, that movie is a masterpiece. And I actually read the book after I watched the movie, thinking that it was, thinking that it came afterward. I didn't realize that the movie was based on the book. And when you read it, it is so dead on and so I don't know. It's more eloquent than the movie is. It's not as silly. It's still funny, but it's witty rather than silly. There's some areas where that movie gets a little silly, which is not a problem, not a complaint on my end. But as you read it, you start to realize, because it's a book that's based on a fictional a fictional account of another book?
The Great Escape. So, in terms of the film to the book, there's a lot of changes in terms of there was less tunnels in the movie than there was in real life, and all the stuff with Steve McQueen and his motorbikes was just purely to please him. But I think the message and remembering some of the horrible things from our history is the important message from that. But I'm not going to delve too deep on that because it's not true to the book. But yeah, I just think the overall message of the film and the book is very important in remembering that people did horrible things back in our history. My actual choice for this is something that a lot of you may not have ever heard of, which is Foot Rot Flats, The Dog's Tale. Based on the book series, which is cartoon comic strip. For those of you that aren't familiar, which is made into this little movie here. So it's an amazing film. It's by a New Zealand author, Murray Ball, and it's all about basically a man and his dog on their farm in New Zealand and the adventures that they get into, with some amazing music done by Dave Dobbin, who's a New Zealand, I don't know what sort of genre you'd call him. Look him up, he's very unique. But yes.
It's Harry Potter, especially The Prisoner of Azkaban. Because the thing that I love the most about Harry Potter, especially in The Prisoner of Azkaban, is how they portray a lot of the story of Sirius Black, his pain, and also all about the Dementors. I still remember reading that scene and then seeing that scene on the big screen, how Alfonso Cuarón touched the creatures and how the creatures can swallow all of the happiness and all the horror. I still remember that music, and also how he adapted that time travel scene. Has a lot of things different from the book, and it really enhanced it a lot better. So that is my choice. And also between all of the books, all the great creatures and all the great characters, but still they left so many things that didn't touch from the books. And like also Jason was saying earlier, I would love in the future that maybe HBO or Netflix to do like 10 episodes or 5 episodes per book to explore all the details that the movies never touch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Prisoner of Azkaban is easily my favorite of all the movies. That's an awesome choice. I'm surprised we haven't talked about Harry Potter more tonight. I was definitely expecting a little more love for Harry Potter because it's easily like one of the best cast ensembles based on a book. Especially with, I love Sirius Black. He's one of my favorite characters, so I'm glad that you brought him up. But Gary Oldman's performance is amazing. And also, how could we not mention Alan Rickman as Snape? Like, who else could have done that the way that he did? He's perfection every moment, and so many of those characters are perfectly cast.
Yeah, even like, I forget her name, the one that portrayed Dolores Umbridge also, she did a really great job also.
I just watched Order of the Phoenix, and she is such a horrible villain. Yeah. She's truly the worst. Like, yeah, she's very good though. I agree with you with the casting.
I think while we're on the subject of Harry Potter, I think technically and overall, I think Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban is a better film.
Yes.
But I think my opinion biased because my favorite book is Goblet of Fire.
That's a great choice.
I feel like if you compare the books side by side, like Goblet of Fire is double the size of Prisoner of Azkaban. And I feel like that was also the turning point because Rowling did a really good job of aging the books with its audience.
Yes.
And Goblet of Fire was where it became like more mature. Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
like you said, I really hated in the movie in the Goblet of Fire when they eliminated, like it was like 2-3 chapters all about the Quidditch World Cup. They left it at, and the tournament begins, and that was it. I was like, what happened to the game and all of the details about the game? And
Yeah.
also like the big scene when Voldemort, when Peter Pettigrew is doing the potion for Voldemort, and also is in the book is more violent compared to the movie. And also, like the big ending in book 4 is when Hagrid goes to recruit the other giants for the next war. And I was like, I want to see that cliffhanger, and they didn't put it on the movie. Like, there was a lot of stuff that they cut out.
Yep. Yeah, and they concentrated on a couple of weird things. I felt. I don't know. But it is my favorite book, though. I felt like, and for the reason I said, I felt like that's when the books started becoming more mature. That led the paving ground to. I mean, we did get our first serious death. It wasn't serious dying, but Cedric. That was, you were saying it the other day. It became real, like these characters could go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the other thing that you said. Like Cedric, I still remember when they killed him off in the book. I was like, whoa! Now everything's getting serious. I still remember reading book 5 when they killed Sirius. I was like, why they just introduced Sirius in the books, and like they kill him right really, really early. That's the thing that I always hated about that book 5.
But question 1, I have to go with Michael Crichton's The Great Train Robbery. This was well before Jurassic Park. I believe it was 1979. This movie was done, featuring Sean Connery as the main character, and it's just kind of an old Victorian England style like heist movie, hence the name Great Train Robbery, right? But not only is it extremely accurate, it is written, screenplay, and directed by Michael Crichton.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it is literally like you can't get any more the author's vision than that. And even in the audio commentary that they did for the DVD, which I watched, they had, like, he was talking about it, and there was one scene that was slightly different from the book, and he even explained, I changed this scene ever so slightly because it occurred to me in a like film setting, it just doesn't play as well, so I had to make a couple changes. Just to add a little bit of suspense.
Oh.
Otherwise, I mean, it is almost like scene for scene, almost word for word. It's great. Highly recommend it to anyone that's never seen it.
A lot of people said, the good ones like Harry Potter is really close, but to go what people haven't said yet, have you seen Prose Zero? It's a Takashi Miike film. It's an adaptation of a manga, but the reason I think it's the closest is because this director, like Takashi Miike, he's like wild. He always does really crazy stuff, and he was the only person that could direct make a manga look believable on film. There's a scene where they do human bowling, like he bowls with humans, and then if it wasn't him, it wouldn't look right. Only he could make it look like that.
As far as books go, if you're looking for an experience that will give you a lot of anxiety, there's a book called House of Leaves. I could tell you who the author is, but I will totally mispronounce it. So just look up House of Leaves, and the most complicated last name you can find, that's the one you want. The book is literally, it makes you change the way you read the book. It's not traditionally put together. And it's a balance between a narrative story and like a reference book. So if that's something in your jive, I really recommend that book. It's I've never felt so tense reading a book because of the way it was organized.
Are we recommending
Another thing,
books now?
yeah, if you want to recommend.
I'm gonna recommend Good Omens by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman. If you guys haven't read that, I finished this before I started the Game of Thrones series. It is an excellent book. It is basically like a satirical comedy about the apocalypse, and it's super fun and really well written. I would check